Breaking news! Nintendo is banning Switch 2 systems. Oh my god, am I going to be next? You know, it makes for a good headline. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that it doesn't. It's obviously a very attractive sort of title, and you could do a lot with the thumbnail, which I'll try and come up with something decent with it. But obviously, a lot of people online right now, websites, YouTubers, are talking about Nintendo banning Switch 2 systems. And when you see a headline like that, of course, you automatically think the worst. People who hate the company for whatever reason are like, see, they're bad people. And then you start to actually understand the situation, and you have people that are talking about it who don't fully understand what they're talking about. And then you have other people that are just trying to push some sort of narrative out there. So I figured I would throw my hat into this discussion as well. Why not? I haven't decided what I want to do for dinner yet, so I'll do this before I eat dinner. But yes, Nintendo is kind of banning Switch 2 systems, but not really. Like, this is all stemming from the MIG Switch. Now, if you remember what the MIG Switch was, this was something I talked about quite a bit on the channel. It was an interesting device that would allow you to play backups of your Nintendo Switch 1 games on your Nintendo Switch 1. It was essentially a little cartridge that you would attach a micro SD card into, and there was also a dumper for the system as well. There was a dumper. Basically, you would take your own games, you would dump them onto your system, and then you could play them via backup on this cartridge on your Nintendo Switch 1. The way you would do this is by inserting the cartridge over and over again into the system, which would then allow you to cycle through the different games you have on there, pretty much making it contingent on your library and how big your SD card was as far as how many games you could fit on there. And honestly, the product itself worked. It was just sort of all the stuff that was tied in with the product that made it kind of a problematic thing. I ended up purchasing one, and the one I was supposed to get was supposed to come with the dumper and the cartridge itself, but at the last second, the dumper wasn't available, so I ended up just with the cartridge, and there was nothing I could do with the cartridge because you had to have a certain file of ROM on the cartridge itself for it to even work. So I was just like, well, this is kind of pointless. Now, there's been lots of questions as to whether or not the MIG Switch is now property of Nintendo. What happened to the company? I know some people got sued over this, some of the distributors of the MIG Switch. It's been a very sticky situation. But I say all that to kind of say, more than likely, you don't own a MIG Switch. The amount of people that own a functioning MIG Switch and would use something like this is honestly very, very minuscule in the grand scheme of things. Yes, it's fun to talk about, and if you get one, it is fun to showcase it off, but you have to have all the working parts and working components in order to make this a sort of thing. And then, of course, we heard that, people were testing MIG switches on the Switch 2 on the lead up to the system, and it wasn't working. It was bricking systems, and people ran with that story as well, even though it made absolutely no sense in the world. Like, no thought process went into this when people were talking about it. And then I, of course, came along and said, yeah, that's not true. And lo and behold, it's not true, because people have been using the MIG Switch to play Nintendo Switch 1 games on the Nintendo Switch 2. So what is this about Nintendo banning Nintendo Switch 2 systems? What does this have to... What's the correlation between these two things? Well, people are not smart people. People are stupid. The average person is not a very intelligent person when it comes to certain things, and really a lot of things in general. But what people are finding out is, if you decide to take a Nintendo Switch 1 game online, playing with the MIG Switch on your Nintendo Switch 2, Nintendo will ban the system from connecting online and being able to play online games. So yes, this does impact the Nintendo Switch 2, but this isn't anything new. It was the same thing with the Nintendo Switch 1. If you played these backup versions of your games online, there was a chance that Nintendo would lock out your system from being able to play games online, just like any system mod is. When you alter a system, You are then outside of the jurisdiction of what that system is supposed to be doing. You have manipulated it. If you have a modded PlayStation system and you go online, you're going to run into trouble. I had an original Xbox that was very modded, and that original Xbox could not connect to Xbox Live because of the fact that it was a modded system. So what did you do? You played with X-Link Kai, and that's where I played all of my Halo 2 stuff on there. This is basic stuff when it comes to tinkering with the system outside of the way a system is supposed to be handled, outside of the intended use of the system. And obviously, something like a MIG switch is going to potentially cause problems with that because you are circumventing certain things on the Nintendo Switch system that are, of course, put into place so that there is, no limited piracy, online features can be locked out. None of this is new. This is all stuff that has been since the dawn of online console gaming. If you have a modded system, you do run the risk of running into some problems. Not everyone with a MIG switch that goes online is running into this, but there obviously is something Nintendo is doing in order to verify the authenticity of the game. Now, I know what you're saying. Well, RGT, if it's a backup copy of your game, how is it able to distinguish that? I'm not really sure, to be perfectly honest with you. I guess maybe there is a community of people that have a MIG switch, because that was kind of one of my things that I had with the system. When the MIG switch first came out, it was definitely sort of contingent on people making versions of Switch 1 games that were compatible with the MIG switch, because if people didn't do that, and no more dumpers were made for the system, then you weren't going to be able to do anything with this cartridge. So maybe the community behind it has changed, and essentially what that will mean is that multiple people are using the same game identifier for that version of the game. So think about it like this. If 500 people have a MIG switch, okay? And there's a website that hosts MIG switch ROMs. And I'm not even saying that this is necessarily the case. I'm just giving an example of how this could be something that would be traceable, because like I said, I pretty sure I threw away the MIG switch because I couldn't do anything with it at the time. So if 500 people are in this community, 500 people have a MIG switch, somebody creates a MIG switch version of a Switch 1 game that allows you to play it on the MIG switch, and then 300 of those people download that file and put it on their system, and then 100 of those people go online with that version of the game. All of those games are going to have the same traceable ID for the ROM itself, meaning that it's going to show that 100 people are playing the same version of a game, thus making it able for Nintendo to be like, hey, 100 people are not sharing this same game and playing at the same time, so you are obviously using some sort of circumvention method in order to play this game, thus locking you out of your system. It's not what a lot of people are making it out to be. You got to remember, the MIG switch only works with Switch 1 games. Switch 2 emulation, we're nowhere near it quite yet. Obviously, it'll come one day, and different devices and different things will essentially, eventually, I should say, pop up with things like this. But it makes for a fancy headline. It makes for, a good story to tell for the couple hundred people who have a MIG switch. Beware, Nintendo might break your system. But for 99.99999% of people, this is nothing that's going to happen to you. So don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it. I had to make a video to keep up with the Joneses because I see all these dumbasses like Spawnwave making videos. It's going to be a crappy Spawnwave video when he has like his head in the corner and his mouth open like it's just going to be low tier. It's going to be RGT level content, but potentially worse because you think higher of Spawnwave. You put him on a higher pedestal as a human being than I am. And probably rightfully so, because he's probably a better adult than I am. But still, it's going to be crap content when you see that from him. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think about this. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.